My husband is a Buddhist in the Beijing circle. We have been secretly married for 3 years. He is cold and distant to me and never cares about me. Until the video of him and Bai Yueguang kissing passionately in the car was exposed. Only then did I realize that he also had a side that was difficult to control his emotions. Just not for me. Later, his white moonlight came to provoke him. During the entanglement, I fell down the stairs and had a premature hemorrhage. That night, it was widely rumored in the circle that the Buddhist disciple walked down from the altar, stood in the boundless wind and snow, and knocked with every step to pray for a talisman for me. I sent him a divorce decree. Blood oozed from his forehead and his voice trembled. "Don't get divorced, the child needs a father." I slowly pulled my hand out from his palm. "No need, I can leave the father and keep the son." 1. I was at a press conference 10 minutes before the video of Gerald and Xavier kissing passionately in the car was released. Announced a temporary retirement from acting. I just won the Best Actress award last month, and now I suddenly withdrew from the award, which caused a great shock to the audience. Countless microphones were put to my mouth. "Tamia, actress, can you please tell me why you are retiring? Paparazzi photographed you in the obstetrics department earlier. Is the pregnancy news true? Who is the child's father?" I tilted my head back, smiled at the camera, placed my hand on my slightly protruding belly, and was about to answer them one by one. Suddenly I heard someone whispering, "Look at the trending searches. Xavier's relationship has been exposed." My eyelids twitched slightly. There was a lot of noise and chaos all around, and the interview was interrupted. The agent took me to the backstage and handed me the phone. A trending search is a video of a few seconds. On a rainy night, Maybach's car window was half open. Xavier was wearing a light blue cheongsam, nestling tenderly in the man's arms and offering him her red lips. A hand with round Buddhist beads wrapped around its wrist was wrapped around her slender waist. The atmosphere is charming and enchanting. Hashtag the cheongsam fairy and the Buddhist from Beijing kiss passionately in the car. Hashtag Xavier Gerald is so sweet. Hashtag he is pure and has few desires, but he breaks his vows only for her. Hashtag. These trending tags overwhelmed the news about my retirement and ranked in the top 3 of the entertainment list. Agent Stephanie said with an unpleasant expression, "This Xavier, it's not enough to steal your endorsement and resources. Now she's also trying to steal your popularity." She lit a cigarette and spoke without thinking in anger. "Tamia, isn't your husband also a nobleman in Beijing? Let him come forward to warn Xavier. I don't believe she will dare to be so arrogant." I lowered my head and remained silent until the phone screen automatically went out, reflecting a pale face. Only then did he manage to squeeze a word out of his throat. "My husband is Gerald." There was a snap. Stephanie's cigarette fell to the ground from her fingertips. 2. Few people in the circle know that I am Gerald's wife. Gerald's family believed that I was shameless and took the initiative to seduce Gerald, so they kept the news of our marriage secret. Actually, it is not. 3 years ago, I was invited to attend an event. After the meeting, the investor came over to toast me, and I was caught off guard and drank a glass of champagne mixed with aphrodisiac. When I was taken to the hotel, I pinched my palms hard and tried my best to break free from the shackles of the investor. He stumbled and pushed open the half-open door next door. "Help me!" I curled up in the corner, whimpering a few times. The drunken man came out of the bathroom and looked me up and down. Then he suddenly hugged me in his arms. "Are you willing to come back?" The hot breath brushed against my ears. Before I could say anything, the kiss came. The next day, the sky was bright. I saw the man's face clearly. Gerald, the heir of the Gerald Group, who is known as the Buddhist son of the Beijing circle, is aloof by nature and famous for his self-discipline and courtesy. But last night was pretty crazy. I picked up the scattered clothes and fled away. I thought it was just a fleeting romance and we would never meet again. Unexpectedly, Gerald showed up at my door that afternoon and started talking. "Miss Tamia, I'm sorry. I drank too much last night." He asked for my card number and transferred 5 million into it. "I can take responsibility for you. This is the gift for marrying you." On the day we got the marriage certificate, I asked him why he decided to get married. He said that Gerald's family had strict discipline and that he should be held responsible for protecting the girl's innocence. I curled my lips and thought Gerald was probably a good person. Marrying him seems to be a good choice. Unfortunately, I didn't understand it until this moment. Gerald married me because he felt guilty. Xavier and I look so much alike that he mistook me for her when he was drunk, which led to that ridiculous night. 3. Pulling myself away from the memories, I blinked my sore eyes. He picked up the cigarette that Stephanie dropped on the ground and stuffed it into the trash can along with the pregnancy test report in his pocket. Stephanie hurriedly stopped him. "What are you doing? Aren't you going to tell Gerald that you are pregnant?" I didn't say anything. His eyes moved towards the cell phone screen, which suddenly lit up. Xavier is being interviewed by the media. She is still wearing a cheongsam, with a string of sandalwood Buddhist beads on her slender white wrists. I recognized it. It belonged to Gerald. I heard that it was a legacy left by his mother, and he would give it to the lover with whom he would spend the rest of his life. I once asked him for it half-jokingly, but was ruthlessly rejected. Now it is worn on Xavier's hand. I curled the corners of my lips sarcastically. Xavier smiled sweetly at the camera and fiddled with her Buddhist beads intentionally or unintentionally. The reporter asked knowingly, "Ms. Xavier, is this from Mr. Gerald?" "Yes, it's him." Xavier bit her lips to piss her off. Gerald never liked me. By the time I realized this, I was already 3 months pregnant. I wanted to wait until the press conference was over before finding Gerald and telling him that he was going to be a father. As a result, the video became a hot topic first, completely revealing the inside story of this marriage. In the past, I thought Gerald was cold and never seemed to have any emotions when facing me. I just found out today that he also has a side where he can't control his emotions. Just not for me. I suddenly felt that these 3 years were a joke. Tears struggled and welled up in my eyes, ruining my delicate makeup. A pair of shiny leather shoes appeared in the blurred vision. Gerald put his hands in his pockets and looked down at me. His voice was calm. "Tamia, you know everything. I know why he married me. I also know why he is cold to me." I wiped my tears, stood up, raised my hand and slapped him, cursing him. "Gerald, you're such an asshole." 4. I had an appointment for an abortion a week later. I didn't tell anyone except Stephanie, not even Gerald. However, on the day of the operation, he blocked me in the obstetrics corridor. Gerald stared at me for a few seconds, then slowly moved his eyes towards my belly and asked in a cold voice, "Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant?" I thought it was funny. "Why should I tell you? I am the child's father." Still an indifferent tone. No emotion, just stating the facts. I suddenly lost my temper and yelled at him. "How can a man who cheated on his wife be qualified to be a father?" This statement seemed to succeed in irritating Gerald. He warned in a deep voice, "Tamia, don't do it." What did I do wrong? The private hospital has strong security and there were no idle people waiting, but the quarrel still attracted the attention of the nurse. I didn't want to attract attention, so I pulled my mask up, but the next second I heard my number being called. It's my turn. I pushed Gerald aside and walked into the consulting room. Just as I took 2 steps, my body suddenly felt lighter and someone picked me up. "Have you made enough noise?" Gerald lowered his eyes to look at me. "You are angry with me, but the child is innocent." He used so much force that I couldn't get away. I could only hit him angrily. "Gerald, are you crazy? If you want a child, you can divorce me and go to Xavier to have one. Why are you interfering with my decision?" Gerald suddenly let go and threw me into the back seat of the Maybach. My stomach started to churn as I remembered the video of him and Xavier kissing right here. He ignored my ugly expression, pinched my chin and kissed me. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. Gerald bit my lip and lost control of his emotions for the first time because of me. He sneered, "Divorce? Tamia, don't even think about it." There was a knock on the car window at this moment. Xavier stood there in dismay, her face pale. She choked up and whispered, "Gerald, what are you talking about? If you don't divorce her, then what am I?" 5. This season is early autumn. A cold rain came unexpectedly. Xavier waited for the answer stubbornly, her long hair wet and draped over her shoulders, and she sneezed at the right time. Gerald frowned and was about to get off the car. I knew he was heartbroken, so I stopped him on purpose and said, "It's okay not to get a divorce, but you have to agree to my 3 conditions." I saw Xavier clench his fists out of the corner of my eye, and I smiled. "First, make the fact of the secret marriage public. Second, Make her apologize to me in public and admit that she interfered in our marriage. Third, after doing all this, she must disappear from my sight forever. The air was silent for a long time. Gerald was slow to respond, and Xavier stared at him nervously. At that time, their separation was not very happy. Xavier has a proud personality. She would quarrel, break up, or disappear at the slightest dissatisfaction. Gerald has coaxed her many times. The last time she ran abroad in anger. Gerald was no longer used to her. Then he turned around and married me. 3 years had passed, and she knew that Gerald still had feelings for her. But she was unsure of my position in Gerald's heart. She is scared, afraid he would agree to my request, afraid that he would no longer want her. I urged Gerald, "Have you thought about it?" Xavier was anxious. Like a rabbit showing its fangs, it glared at me angrily. "Why should I apologize to you? Haven't you heard that the one who is not loved is the third party? So what if you're married to Gerald? He hasn't forgotten me even for one day in the past 3 years." As if to prove her statement, she raised her hand and waved it in front of me, showing off the Buddhist beads. "You failed as Mrs. Gerald for never wearing your family heirloom once." The ridicule was harsh. In the past, I would have probably fainted. But now, I just looked at her calmly, my fingers clenched in my pockets, looking forward to her continuing to speak and speaking more. Xavier noticed my little move, pointed at me and screamed, "Gerald, she's recording, she's recording." Gerald looked up at me and I looked at him. They looked at each other, and there was only silence. He hesitated for a long time and finally he stretched out his hand to me. "Give me your phone." Zig. I didn't move. Xavier came around, opened the door and violently searched my pockets. I was about to slap her but I found I couldn't move. Gerald grabbed my wrist. He whispered, "I'm sorry, Tamia. I can't ruin Xavier's career." Xavier? How intimate. He knew better than anyone what kind of public opinion Xavier would face once the recording was exposed. So he decided to let me suffer and save her. After deleting the recording, Xavier threw the phone back at me, hitting me in the stomach. I gasped in pain. Gerald seemed to be panicking, with a trace of distress in his eyes, and asked concernedly, "What's wrong? Do you want to be careful?" Then he turned around and scolded Xavier. "Don't you have eyes?" This was probably the first time that Gerald had bullied her. She stood there in a daze. After several seconds, tears began to roll down her cheeks. Extremely aggrieved. "Gerald, I didn't mean it." Gerald ignored her, rubbed my belly, and asked again, "Honey, does it hurt here?" A belated title, belated concern. Hypocrisy to the extreme. I knocked his hand down, pulled the corners of my mouth, and forced out a pale smile. "Don't touch me, I feel disgusting." Disgusting. These 2 words hit Gerald. His eyes were obviously hurt for a moment, and then gradually turned cold. He ignored me, got out of the car quickly, hugged Xavier in his arms and comforted her softly. "Xavier, I was wrong. I shouldn't have hurt you. Stop crying, okay?" Xavier cried even harder, but she was still smiling at me provocatively, as if to say, "Look, he finally chose me." She leaned softly against Gerald and whispered softly in his ear, "Gerald, I know you still have me in your heart. I was wrong back then. I shouldn't have such a bad temper and disappeared after a quarrel. Don't be angry, please forgive me. I was listening to you sleeping with her that night, and my heart was broken. Don't do that to me again, okay?" Gerald glanced at me, and then, as if deliberately, took her hand. "Okay, I promise." He picked her up and gently placed her on the passenger seat. I was kicked out of the car, standing on the side of the road like a joke. As we drove away, Gerald warned me coldly, "Gerald's family owns controlling stakes in all private hospitals in Beijing. You can try to register with each one and see who dares to perform surgery on you." I froze in place. No wonder he could find this place today. "Gerald, you are such a scoundrel." 7. The rain is getting heavier. I waited on the roadside for half an hour and finally Stephanie's car came. Seeing that I was soaking wet and pale, she brought me a dry towel and hot ginger tea. Stephanie looked at me in the rearview mirror and asked worriedly, "The last time you went to a public hospital for a prenatal checkup, you were photographed by paparazzi and netizens scolded you for getting pregnant before marriage and being immoral. Now it's a private hospital, and it's under Gerald's nose. What are you going to do about this? I dried my hair and lay down in the seat tiredly. No words. A breaking news popped up on Weibo. Xavier updated her status. Reconnecting with my first love from my youth. The accompanying picture is a photo of two people holding hands. The slender hand in the photo is undoubtedly Gerald's. All netizens sent their blessings. My sister and brother-in-law finally reunited. Who in the family understands, the Buddhist story shines into reality, and the heroine is still a big star. Get married. Please get married right here. I will move the Civil Affairs Bureau here. My hater left a message to Xavier. Ha ha ha, Bai Jia is awesome. She has both a successful career and a happy love life. After Tamia got pregnant, I don't even know whose sponsor gave birth to her child, she's so fucking lousy. Last month, Blue Dragon Film Festival. Xavier and I were competing for the Best Actress award, but the judges thought my acting was better and gave the award to me. Her fans were dissatisfied and claimed that there was something fishy going on. He called me Water Queen all the time. My popularity among the public plummeted, and Xavier took the opportunity to snatch away a lot of my endorsement resources. I didn't bother with her before, but now I suddenly don't want to endure it anymore. She keeps pushing me too far, and it would be hard for me to justify myself if I didn't fight back. I dug out my marriage certificate from my phone album and posted a microblog. Hidden marriage for 3 years, currently preparing for divorce. A concise sentence. The amount of information is huge. Instantly, it became a hot search. Netizens' comments began to change the tone. What's going on? Tamia's husband is Gerald? Just now I was blessing Xavier. I didn't expect she was a mistress. What's the meaning of reconciliation? It's clearly an extramarital affair. How disgusting. Don't just scold the woman, the man is not a good person either. He had an affair with his first love during his wife's pregnancy, and scandals were all over the place. Plus one, he appears to be a cool and aloof Buddhist, but secretly he does such dirty things. I stared at the comments section and smiled with satisfaction, but a few seconds later, all the entries were removed and replaced by a statement on the official website of the Gerald Group. Out of nothing. No names were mentioned. There is no mention of who made up the story. The response was ambiguous, but a large number of trolls flooded into my comments section. It was so funny, the Water Queen got slapped in the face. This marriage certificate is obviously fake. Luckily, I didn't fall for it. A poor girl's daughter dares to touch the top wealthy family in Beijing. Tamia, do you have any shame? Have you been abandoned by your sponsor and are you suffering from paranoia? You are fantasizing about someone else being your husband. I am filled with bitterness. The unquenchable anger burned in my chest, as if it was going to burn me to ashes. Just when my sanity was about to collapse, I received a phone call. Gerald's voice rang in my ears like poison wrapped in honey. He said, "Wife, this is punishment. Do you still dare to mention divorce again, huh? I don't understand what he means. Obviously you don't love me. Why do we have to torture each other and not let go?"
He calmly replied, "Idare."
Then he hung up the phone on Gerald. The consequence was that he was completely slandered and his career collapsed completely. That night, Gerald's family heard the news of the divorce and ordered me to go back to the old house. The magnificent reception hall was filled with people. They are all elders in Gerald's family. My father stood awkwardly in the corner, with a head full of white hair and skin tan from working on the construction site, looking out of place. When he saw me coming, he gave me an honest and simple smile. He even mouthed to me to comfort me. "Don't be afraid, Dad will support you." The old man scolded her. "Have you forgotten how you got into Gerald's house? Now you dare to ask for a divorce. You are really too arrogant." He always thought that I had deliberately climbed into Gerald's bed and married into a wealthy family. I glanced at Gerald. He leaned lazily on the sofa and made no attempt to explain for me. My father couldn't bear to hear me being scolded, so he protected me behind him. "My daughter is not that kind of person. It was your son who came to propose to me and said he would take responsibility, so I agreed to the marriage. Now we have only been married for 3 years, and the video has gone viral online. Your son was able to cheat, but my daughter is the sinner for filing for divorce." The old man was stunned for a moment. He is old and doesn't pay attention to entertainment news. He probably doesn't know about Gerald and Xavier kissing passionately in the car. I clicked on the video and played it in front of everyone. Everyone present saw it. Gerald's other relatives tried to smooth things over. To Mia, this is not a big deal. The rich kid is just having an affair. Besides, you are already pregnant, and no one can shake your position. Be obedient, turn a blind eye, and live your life as usual. A few words to whitewash the situation. We are even discussing the baby's name. I walked up to Gerald and his eyes fell on my stomach. I asked him calmly in a very gentle voice, "Wouldn't it be better to divorce me and marry the person you truly love?" Gerald scoffed. "To Mia, that's enough. Don't play hard to get with me." I stared at him in confusion, with a blank look in my eyes. He suddenly lost his temper, pulled me over, held me in his arms, lowered his head and whispered in my ear, almost gritting his teeth, "What are you pretending for? You are just jealous of Xavier. You are imitating her past behavior, acting up and making trouble. You want me to coax you, right? Okay, I'll coax you." As he spoke, he reached out and pinched my face as if in an intimate way. The tone was extremely perfunctory. "Honey, be good. Don't mention divorce anymore. Just give birth to the baby. I'll give you whatever you want. Are you satisfied with this?" I curled the corners of my mouth and smiled softly. He still thinks I'm just having a bad temper. Thought I was trying to get his attention. That's ridiculous. I looked at the face in front of me that had made my heart beat so many times before, and for the first time I felt that it was no more than that. He actually doesn't deserve it. It's just my love that gives him a layer of gilded beauty. After realizing this, I coldly brushed his hand away and stood up. The old man had already figured out the whole story and he grabbed the cane in his hand and hit Gerald hard on the back. "You are such an embarrassment. Get rid of that woman outside right away." Gerald's family attaches great importance to family tradition. The scandal affects the stock market, so the old man is naturally furious. The living room was in chaos. Several people went up to persuade them to stop fighting. My father pulled me back to a safe place and said, "Girl, I'll take you home. This place is too unlucky." I responded and left with my dad. Gerald was beaten to his knees. He wiped the blood from his mouth and stared at me. "To Mia, don't leave." I ignored him. There was no looking back. In the past, when he did something wrong and was criticized by his father, I would always cry. But today, I was indifferent throughout the whole process and didn't even want to look at him. Gerald was stunned for a few seconds. After he reacted, his face lost all color. He finally realized that when I asked for a divorce, I was not just talking. I really don't want him anymore. 9. Before leaving the old house, the old man called me. He handed me an agreement. "In this matter, it is indeed that brat who made the mistake first. I will not stop you from getting a divorce, but Gerald's family has few children, so I hope you can give birth to this child." I flipped through the contract and it clearly stated that no matter who had the custody, Gerald's family would pay $100 million in custody fees every year. He knew I was short of money. Because of public pressure, people in the industry avoided me, several endorsement contracts were terminated one after another, and I was asked to pay compensation by the brands. Incurred huge debts. When we got home, my dad pulled out a tin box from under the bed. Inside was all his savings, both in small and large amounts. He said, "Don't be afraid, my daughter. Dad will support you." When I saw his wrinkled and muscular hands, my eyes became wet. My mother died of complications during childbirth, so this little old man acted as both my father and my mother, raising me. When I was 8 years old, my classmates laughed at me for having a mother who gave birth to me but didn't raise me. My dad rushed into the classroom, grabbed their ears and lectured them. "Who are you talking about, you little bastard? My daughter doesn't have a mother, but she has me. If you keep saying dirty things, I will beat you up." When I was 13, I got my first period and soiled the sheets. My dad ran to the supermarket to buy me sanitary napkins and asked a neighbor to teach me how to use them. I was embarrassed and scared. He told me, "This is a normal physiological phenomenon. There is nothing to be ashamed of. My daughter, congratulations on growing up." When I was 17, I applied for the acting department, but the tuition was expensive. I stick like a young boy and sat in the audience laughing happily. "Hey, see, that's my daughter on the stage, the movie queen." There are so many things like this. For example, now, My career was ruined, my marriage was failing, and I was almost at the end of my rope. My dad held my hand and said solemnly, "Whatever decision you make, Dad supports you. If you want to have a baby, Dad will work hard to make money and be a good grandfather. If you want to abort the baby and get a divorce, Dad will help you find a lawyer and sue. My father is really good to me." I cried my heart out. He hurriedly wiped my tears and coaxed me like he did when we were little. "Don't cry, Dad will always be your strongest supporter. But he is old, and he has heart problems due to overwork in his early years. I don't want him to worry about me anymore." In addition, I underwent a series of examinations when I made the appointment for surgery. The doctor said that I have a weak constitution, and if I have this baby removed, I may never be able to get pregnant again. I thought about it for a long time and decided to sign the agreement, keeping the child. At the same time, I cheered myself up and started preparing for a divorce, but after searching all the lawyers in Beijing, no one dared to take my case. 'Cause Gerald said hello. Just when I was about to give up, a man came to my door. He was wearing a windbreaker, had a tall figure, and had a cold look. I felt that he looked familiar. "Excuse me, who are you?" He handed me a business card and introduced himself. "Hello, Ms. Tamiya. I am Anderson." Anderson. I seem to have heard this name somewhere. Oh, I remember now. After the Blue Dragon Film Festival, there was a fan meeting. Anderson held up my debut photo album and said that the elders in my family liked me very much and asked him to get an autograph. I signed it for him. I didn't expect him to show up again. I joked with him, "Are you here to get an autograph today as well?" Anderson shook his head. "No." He lowered his eyes to look at me. His dark eyes were like a deep pool. His emotions were murky and unclear. Anderson said, "I'm here to help you get a divorce." 10. The continuous rain for several days suddenly stopped. A golden ray of sunlight shone through the thick clouds onto Anderson. It reminded me of a poem for no reason. When you are surrounded by mountains and rivers and think there is no way out, you will find another village when you look up. This is indeed the case. I checked Anderson's resume. He graduated from a prestigious university, never lost a divorce case he handled, and most importantly, he did not hang around in Beijing. Not constrained by Gerald. He was businesslike. "Ms. Tamiya, please prepare the evidence of the breakdown of the relationship between husband and wife as soon as possible, and the evidence of the other party's wrongdoing." I sent the kissing video and Xavier's Weibo screenshots to Anderson. It takes time for the court to accept the case. I've had severe morning sickness lately, and I always feel uncomfortable when I smell the exhaust fumes from cars in the city. My father took me back to his hometown so that I could rest and take care of my baby. The late autumn in the south of the Yangtze River is poetic and picturesque. Green bricks and black tiles, a small bridge with flowing water, walking on the stone road. At the end of the alley is an old Western-style house. We haven't been back for a long time. The house was filled with dust, and my dad was afraid that I would choke on it, so he quickly pushed me out of the door. I stood in the yard, bored, admiring the view. The sunset in the town is more gorgeous than that in the city. The golden color on the ground crushes the setting sun. The sweet fragrance of osmanthus fills the air on the roadside, and the pomegranates are full of fruits, which bend the branches with their weight. The door of the neighboring building creaked open. Anderson walked out, wearing home clothes with bangs hanging down, covering her long eyelashes. It is cool and yet a little gentle. He was not surprised to see me and greeted me generously. "Hello again, Miss Tamiya." I was stunned for a second, then asked stutteringly, "What a coincidence, you live here too?" Anderson shook the key in his hand and denied it with a smile. "I'm not busy recently. I took my annual leave and came here to travel." "Not busy." Last time I went to his law firm to sign a power of attorney, I heard his subordinates sighing in the tea room. Attorney Anderson has more than a dozen cases on his plate. How can he still have the energy to take Tamiya's case? He works 24 hours a day. He is dying. You don't understand. This is the power of idols. I opened my mouth, but before I could ask the question, the sound of my cell phone vibrating violently came between us. Anderson's phone rang. Someone asked him about work, and he answered patiently. Even if he thought I might get bored waiting, suit for your case has been filed, and the trial will be held in about 3 months. "Yeah," I said in a very low voice. Has your ex-husband contacted you recently? Not. I blocked Gerald a long time ago. Anderson nodded and reminded him. He seemed very anxious when you left Beijing. He kept asking around to find out where you were every day. I curled my lips and said nothing. How could Gerald be worried about me? He should reconcile with Xavier and try to please each other. As the sky darkened, the smell of fireworks from every household penetrated into my nose. My dad stuck his head out of the window and called me home for dinner. My lady, the chicken soup is getting cold. Anderson turned back to the house with interest. He had only taken 2 steps when his phone rang again. He didn't even have time to say goodbye and could only give me an apologetic look. The moment the door opened, I saw the cold lunchbox on the table. Is that his dinner? I really wanted to ask him why he came to Jiangnan for vacation when he was so busy, but after thinking it over for a while, I didn't ask. Not wanting to disturb him, I typed a line on my phone and showed it to him through the window. Attorney Anderson, when we're done, do you want to try my dad's cooking? Anderson raised an eyebrow and smiled. 11. I have lived in Jiangnan for almost 3 months. The pace of life here is slow. During the day, I would make a pot of tea and stay in the attic to read and write until the sun went down. In the evening, I would take a walk with my dad, listen to a piece of pingtan, and fall asleep to Wunong's soft words. Anderson visited occasionally, and he was polite and courteous. My father liked him very much and would invite him to dinner every now and then. The house he rented was next door to mine, and the balcony was just around the corner. In the late pregnancy, I started to get up frequently at night. As the frequency increased, I lost my sleepiness and simply put on my coat and sat in the rocking chair on the balcony, staring blankly. As the year draws to a close, small red lanterns are hung on every street corner. Anderson passed a bunch of candied haws across the railing and said, "Instant, all the splendor was splendid in my eyes." Anderson came out of the firelight, stood downstairs, and held up his phone to show me the words on the screen. "I will never lose to you." I raised the corners of my lips slightly. The candied haws in my mouth are so sweet. The fireworks ended and I had a good sleep after a long absence. When I woke up the next day, Anderson had left. My father went to the market to buy vegetables and left the gate of the courtyard open. A few children from the neighborhood smelled the scent of the plums and were unable to walk. I smiled and waved them in, moved a few chairs, and sat under the tree to chat. We talked about Doraemon, Cardcaptor Sakura, and Boonie Bears to Peppa Pig. They stared at my belly and asked if it was a brother or sister. I honestly said I didn't know, and suddenly one of the kids pointed behind me and raised his voice. "Sister, that big brother is watching you." I looked in the direction of his finger, and a familiar figure came into my sight. Gerald was standing at the gate, staring at me for a long time. So long that my eyes turned red. He finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Tamia, I finally found you." 12. I didn't expect Gerald to follow me here. Tamia, it took me 3 months to finally figure out one thing. The one I love is not Xavier, but you. I don't know why he changed, but this sentence is so absurd that I can't help but ask him back. "Do you love me?" Gerald said he loved me. How ridiculous. If he loved me, he would treat me as a substitute for Bai Yueguang and ignored me for 3 years after marriage. When I was full of joy and wanted to tell him that I was pregnant, he kissed Bai Yueguang passionately in the car. In order to protect her reputation, he did not hesitate to destroy my career. This is what he calls love. How disgusting. I was thinking about this and I actually vomited. Gerald didn't hide. The pampered nobleman wasn't afraid of dirt or stench. He bent down and patted my back carefully. "You don't believe it, do you? I admit that I married you in the beginning because you looked like Xavier. I used you to irritate her and force her to give in, but when she finally came back to me, I wasn't happy at all. When you filed for divorce and disappeared, I couldn't sleep all night. As soon as I closed my eyes, my mind was filled with you. That's when I realized that my feelings for Xavier were just obsession. But for you, it was love." The evening breeze blew up the strands of hair on his forehead, and his clear pupils clearly reflected the mockery on my face. He was at a loss for a moment and held my hand tightly. "Honey, don't look at me like that. Give me a chance and let's start over, okay? There is a kind of people in this world who are always obsessed with what they have lost. Whatever you haven't got, whatever is in the past, is always the best match. That's the kind of person Gerald is. In fact, he doesn't really love me or Xavier, he only loves himself. Only when he loses someone can he never forget them. I sneered and scolded him. Gerald, don't be a jerk. The lawyer has informed you of the court date. Remember to be there on time. Now, please get out of my house. This was the first time I spoke harshly to him. His pupils trembled violently and tears suddenly fell, hitting the back of my hand and boiling. I wiped the stain off in disgust and went back to the house. When closing the door, Gerald leaned against the door frame and his hand was pinched and bruised. I was shocked. Are you crazy? He endured the pain until veins on his forehead bulged and cold sweat broke out as he asked word by word. What do I have to do to get you to withdraw the lawsuit? Gerald asked me how to withdraw the divorce proceedings. I didn't answer. In fact, I gave him a chance. On the day of the surgery in the Maybach, I proposed 3 conditions, asking him to choose between Xavier and me, but unfortunately, he chose the former and abandoned me. Gerald seemed to recall this memory as well. He looked annoyed and eager to make amends. Give me a day and I'll prove it to you. To prove how much you love me. Unfortunately, it's too late. Teen. When my dad got home, he learned that Gerald had been there. The old man who was originally serving me food with a smile on his face turned cold and said, "He still has the nerve to come?" He poured himself a glass of white wine and drank it while scolding Gerald. I raised my daughter with my heart in my hands, but after marrying him, she didn't enjoy any happiness and only suffered injustice. Who is this guy? Don't let me see him again, or I'll beat him up every time I see him. My father was very emotional and felt sorry for me. I advised him, Dad, you can scold me all you want, but if you have a bad heart, drink less. I know my limits, but my dear, what are your plans after the divorce? I teased him on purpose. I'll give you the support money and take you and your kids on a world tour. As expected, my dad was amused by me and snorted while laughing. He held his heart for a few minutes and said earnestly, Dad is old and can't accompany you forever. I often dream about your mother recently. She blames me for not protecting you. Lawyer Anderson, who lived next door to our house a while ago, is a good person. I think he is more reliable than Gerald. Probably drank too much. My dad started to talk nonstop, and the topic became more and more off-topic. I quickly interrupted him, cleaned up the dishes, and fled back to the bedroom. As soon as I lay down on the bed, the phone in my pocket vibrated. Stephanie sent me a message. Look at the trending searches. Xavier is going to get cold. Clicked on Weibo. The constant buzzing of messages caused my brain to temporarily shut down. First, Gerald tagged me. He never uses this kind of social software, but he registered an account a few minutes ago and made our relationship public. Legal husband and wife, the child is mine at actor Tamia. Afterwards, the official website of the Gerald Group clarified the groundless Weibo post. After the social event, I sent Ms. Xavier home. She was drunk and unconscious. Gerald quickly pushed her away and there was no passionate kiss. The Buddhist beads are just the same style. Please stop talking nonsense. The president's wife will be unhappy. I couldn't help but sneer. Gerald's PR team is really good at whitewashing. With just a few words, the label of Gerald cheating on his wife was removed. The comments section was abuzz with discussion. Reverse and reverse and reverse again, my CPU is burnt out. Xavier hypes and pays for it, really has no sense of shame. So, the marriage certificate Tamia posted was not photoshopped. I thought she was just trying to get attention and deceive people. I am the only one who is confused. Why did it take so long to clarify? Gerald is so irresponsible. Haha, obviously she was forced to do this. It seems that Xavier's position in Gerald's heart threatens Tamia. Who doesn't know that the Water Queen was scheming to get into bed with Gerald when they broke up? Xavier is Gerald's true love, and true love is innocent. Cult fans, stop talking nonsense. The judging panel is fair and strict. Also, no matter how Tamia got to the top, she is now a legal wife. Your master knew she was married but still stuck with her. He took the initiative like that. He can't justify himself. Agree. Mistresses and mistress fans should get out of the entertainment industry. Xavier's personal Weibo account quickly collapsed. There were tens of thousands of messages scolding her, and her fans were too busy to control the comments, so she could only close the comment section. Online exposure alone was not enough. and angry netizens began to dig up negative information about her when she went abroad to study acting. Smoking, drinking, cheating, hooking up. There was even a former assistant who reported her tax evasion under her real name. The incident escalated, the higher authorities intervened to investigate. The circle implemented a soft ban on her. Various endorsements terminated their contracts, and variety shows and films censored her footage overnight. At this point, Xavier's star journey is over. I am the one who has benefited from this turmoil. Stephanie said that within just half an hour, her mailbox was already flooded with business requests, and she even started negotiating a movie she would star in after giving birth. She cried with joy. "You finally made it, Tamia. My nose is sore. It has not been easy along the way." At this moment, a voice message came in on WeChat. It was sent by Anderson. I clicked it and the background noise was very noisy. Obviously, he was still busy. Anderson said, "Look out the window." I looked up and saw several drones circling in the vast night sky. The star-like lights formed 2 lines of words. "Congratulations, Tamia. Please continue to shine in the field you love. 14. After thanking Anderson, a few fireworks suddenly exploded outside the window. The sound of firecrackers rang out one after another. I suddenly remembered that today seemed to be New Year's Eve. I should spend the New Year's Eve with my dad. I went downstairs excitedly, wanting to tell him, "Little old man, don't worry anymore. Your daughter's career is booming, and she will continue to make money by filming and stay by your side." Just as I reached the corner of the stairs, I was blocked by someone. "It's Xavier." I took a few steps back in alarm. I began to look for my father everywhere. The TV in the living room was playing the Spring Festival Gala, and the glass of white wine on the tea table was not finished. Explained that my dad is at home, but Xavier suddenly barged in. There was no way he didn't know about it. If he knew about it, how could he not show up? A bad feeling suddenly arose in my heart. "Where's my dad?" Xavier chuckled. "At the door." I looked out through the French window, my feet went weak and I almost fell to my knees. My dad was lying straight in the snow. "It's none of my business. It's your father who has a bad temper. I just scolded you a few times," and he fell down with his hands on his heart. I seemed to have heard what Xavier said, but I also seemed not to have heard it. I remembered what my dad said at the dinner table. He mentioned my mom, Anderson, and Gerald, but he didn't mention himself. Did he know that there was something wrong with his body? How come I didn't notice it? I even hid in my room because I disliked his nagging. Regret and self-blame came flooding in like a tide, almost drowning me. Without time to think further, I instinctively took out my cell phone and called the emergency number. Seeing my panic and pain, Xavier smiled even brighter. "Tamia, you ruined my career, took away my Gerald, and hurt me so badly. Well, in return, I will let you experience the feeling of losing the one you love most." She did it on purpose, deliberately provoked my dad and made him sick. I instantly lost all my rationality and slammed this crazy woman's head against the wall, over and over again with all my might. Xavier screamed in pain, her hair flying around like a madman. During the entanglement, she pushed me hard. I lost my grip on the railing and fell down the stairs, tumbling and crashing, completely knocking me out. When I came to my senses, my white skirt was already stained with blood, abdominal pain like a knife. The explanation. He tugged at his tie, irritated. He thought, these old guys are delaying him from getting back together with his wife. The secretary rushed into the meeting room. "Gerald, something happened to the lady." Gerald froze. The pen at my fingertips fell to the ground. He booked the nearest flight back to Jiangnan and rushed into the hospital as fast as he could, with beads of sweat on his forehead. The red surgical light is like an invisible giant hand. Grab his neck tightly, almost suffocated. The time was very long. Gerald did not eat or drink and stayed at the door of the operating room without leaving. 3 hours later, the door opened. The doctor came out and took off his mask. "Mr. Gerald, the child is fine, but your wife can't stop bleeding, and her will to live is weak." "Maybe." Gerald suddenly raised his eyes. His throat felt uncomfortable and painful, as if something was blocking it. He paused for a long time before speaking. "Go on." There was a slight tremor in the voice. "Doctor, maybe he won't make it through the night." His eyes instantly turned red. The huge panic was like an airtight net that trapped him tightly. Gerald slid down the wall slowly and fell to the ground. Pain spread throughout his body as if a blunt knife was rubbing his flesh. He finally realized his feelings, but she was going to leave him. No, he doesn't allow it. Find the best experts and use the best medicine. If you can't save her, your career will end here. The doctor didn't dare to offend this ancestor and called the team together to discuss further plans. When the old man arrived, the door of the empty emergency room was empty, with only Gerald left. He sat on the cold tiles, his head buried in his arms, looking lifeless. If you don't cherish what you have, the old man sighed, you won't regret it until you lose it. Gerald smiled to himself. Yes, after 3 years of marriage, he never cherished Tamia. She broke her leg while playing the game and called him crying. He said coldly, "Have your assistant take you to the hospital. Don't tell me about such trivial matters in the future." When Xavier only had a minor scratch, he rushed to the set and stood up for her. Tamia didn't know this, and after returning home, she still acted foolishly and coquettishly towards him. "Honey, it hurts. Can you please take care of me?" Gerald didn't even bat an eyelid. "Caring can relieve the pain?" "No, but I want to hear." He interrupted directly. "Sorry, I can't do that." Turning around, he asked Xavier, "Tell me if it hurts, I'll be there for you." Such tragic contrast occurs almost every day. Later, Tamia seemed to have gotten over the disappointment and stopped looking for him. He should have breathed a sigh of relief, but he suddenly felt empty inside. He often got distracted during meetings, wanting to go home to see Tamia, and even mistook Xavier for her several times. At first, Gerald thought it was just a withdrawal reaction and didn't take it seriously, until the passionate kissing video was exposed. Tamia slapped him and called him a bastard. His heart felt like it was pricked by a needle, and it ached intensely. I don't know why, but he just doesn't want to get divorced, and he won't let her abort their child. Gerald didn't get a good night's sleep during the months that Tamia disappeared. I would wake up in the middle of the night with panic. Xavier came to him and asked, "Gerald, what did she feed you? I'm already back with you, why would I go crazy looking for a fake? If you continue like this, it's over between us." The woman became more and more excited as she spoke, almost hysterical. Gerald looked at her in silence. Suddenly I felt very annoyed. How could he think of Tamia as a substitute for Xavier? It is obvious that the two of them have very different personalities except for their similarities in appearance. Tamia is gentle, considerate, and emotionally stable. Xavier is unbridled and willful. He's had enough. Gerald's mother died early, and his father was busy with work and neglected to discipline him. No one taught him what love is. No one taught him how to identify an unhealthy relationship. But that day he suddenly realized. Original. He mistook his unwillingness for true love and missed the person he should cherish the most. 16. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the hospital corridor was deserted. The old man has left. Gerald still maintained that posture, sitting on the ground without moving. An auntie passed by and felt sorry for him. She handed him a piece of paper and gently advised him, "Hey boy, it's okay. Don't cry." Gerald touched his face. "It's wet." Then he realized that he was crying. "My daughter also had a premature birth and suffered heavy bleeding. She has even been put on critical illness notice. Alas, I am really at my wit's end, so I have no choice but to go to Qixia Temple to pray for her." Luckily, she regained consciousness when she came back. You see, people always have to have something to rely on. So don't give up hope. Maybe she will wake up in the next second. The speaker may not mean it, but the listener may take it seriously. Gerald held onto the wall, slowly stood up, thanked her, and walked out of the hospital in a daze. When a person is powerless, he can only choose other ways and hope for a miracle to happen. For example, faith. At this time, Qixia Temple has been closed. There was a black Maybach parked on the roadside. Gerald got out of the car and looked at the solemn road leading to the Buddhist temple. Seems close, but it is actually far away. He knelt down without hesitation and worshipped and prayed with the most pious posture. The cold wind is biting and chilling to the bone. Fine snow fell on his face and melted like tears. He stood up, climbed up one step, and bent his knees again, bowing with every step. Worship in front of the temple. The monk on duty heard the noise and bowed with one hand. "Donor, if you want to pray, please come back after dawn." Gerald lowered his brows and knelt for a long time. I can't wait any longer. Please, master, make an exception and let me ask for a peace amulet. The two were at a stalemate. The monk was moved by his determination and sincerity and let him in. A piece of pure land and 3 sticks of incense. Gerald clasped his hands together, remained silent and sincere, and murmured softly, "Please pray for the protection of the gods and Buddhas. I have no other thoughts in my heart. I just hope that my wife can get through this difficult time." The prayer flags were raised as if in response. It was already dawn when I got the blessed amulet. Gerald held it in his hands with great care and rushed back to the hospital. Perhaps God really heard his request. 2 hours later, the lights in the emergency room went out. The doctor informed him with relief, "Mr. Gerald, congratulations. Your wife's bleeding has stopped and she is no longer in danger." Tamia was transferred to a general ward, but not awake yet. Gerald took out the amulet and gently placed it into her palm. "Wife, don't sleep. Open your eyes and look at me." Tamia's eyelashes fluttered. She had a very long dream. In her dream, she did not drink the glass of champagne mixed with aphrodisiac, and naturally did not meet Gerald. She worked hard to make money by filming, put love behind her, and took her father to the hospital for a checkup and traveled around the world whenever she had time. Every year on her birthday, she only makes one wish. May Dad live a long life. However, there was a voice in her ear that kept calling her. "Honey, please wake up." "Wife." Tamia's first charged Xavier with intentional homicide. A surveillance camera was installed at the door of my house, which accurately recorded everything that happened that day. The doorbell rang and my dad went to open the door. He heard Xavier insulting me and got angry and started arguing with her. Not long after, he fell to the ground holding his heart. Xavier watched the man in danger without helping him and even laughed so hard that he couldn't straighten his back. After I submitted the video to the police, Xavier finally got scared and came to the hospital to find me, wanting compensation and a settlement. I picked up the water glass on the table and threw it at her. "Dream. I will make sure she spends the rest of her life in jail." She was frightened by my angry eyes and huddled behind Gerald. She cried and grabbed his clothes. "Gerald, for the sake of our past relationship, please beg for mercy for me. I really don't want to go to jail." Gerald's eyes moved slightly. After all, it was my unforgettable first love. Even if I don't love her anymore, I don't want her to live too miserably. The second before he opened his mouth, I took out the amulet from under the pillow. "Gerald, you asked for this for me." On the night I gave birth, it was widely rumored in the circle that a Buddhist disciple walked down from the altar, stood in the boundless snow and wind, and knocked with every step to pray for a peace talisman for me. The media reports are as deep as the sea. I looked up and asked him, "But do you know why I had a premature birth and heavy bleeding?" Gerald shook his head. I smiled and told him the truth in a calm voice. "Because your Xavier pushed me down the stairs. My child and I nearly died on the operating table. Now, do you still want to persuade me to let her go?" Xavier's face turned into visible horror, and she tried in vain to explain herself.
Gerald, no.
She was thrown to the ground with great force. Gerald shook her hand off, smoothed his sleeves in disgust, called the police himself, and sent her to jail. More than 10 years in prison. I think she will receive a lot of care there for the rest of her life. Second, deal with my father's funeral. The little old man is usually quite tall, but now he has become a small box. On the day of the funeral, Anderson came to pay his respects. When he heard that I was in a coma and hospitalized for a few days, he wanted to visit me in the obstetrics department, but was stopped outside the door by Gerald's security guard. At this moment, he was wearing a black coat, walked into the morning hall with his head lowered, and placed a bouquet of white chrysanthemums in front of the portrait. We stared at each other in silence for a few seconds. He said in a heavy tone, "My condolences." Just 2 words can easily bring up all my emotions. I remember the months I spent in Jiangnan. My dad would go to the market early in the morning to buy vegetables. Before he left, he would always ask me what I wanted to eat that day. When he passed by the neighbor, he would also greet Anderson and ask him if he had any dietary restrictions on green onions, ginger, and garlic. Between him and me, there are too many memories about my father. I could no longer hold back the tears that I had been holding back for days. They fell like beads from a broken string. I never thought that one day I would cry so hysterically. Anderson sat next to me, listening to me crying quietly. He put his hands on my shoulders, trying to pat my back to calm me down. But suddenly, I was pulled into another hand's arms. Gerald grabbed my waist and looked at Anderson with hostility. "Don't touch my wife. It is a warning tone." Anderson raised his eyebrows and corrected him. "Mr. Gerald, you and I both know that Miss Tamiya is already in the process of divorce proceedings. The implication is, stop calling your wife randomly." "So what?" Gerald tightened his grip around my waist. "As long as there is no verdict, she is still my wife." He held me in his arms and strode out of the morning hall. I struggled all the way, but he held me in his arms even harder. "You're not out of confinement yet, stop crying, okay?" In a deserted corner, his fingertips rubbed the corners of my eyes and gently wiped my tears. "Be careful of sore eyes." I slapped his hand away, my throat full of bitterness. "Lawyer Tamiya is right, don't call me that in the future. Also, please leave now. My dad and I don't want to see you." The old man said, "Don't let him see Gerald again. Otherwise he will beat him every time he sees him. I guess she really hates him." Gerald's hands fell to his sides, clenched until his knuckles turned white. Panic and helplessness were clearly visible in his eyes. "Tamiya, don't." I didn't listen any further, but turned back and knelt in front of the coffin. "Whatever he wants to say. It has nothing to do with me." 18. 7 days after my father passed away, the divorce case went to court. In the courtroom, Anderson sat down with a stack of documents in his arms. His face was severely bruised, so he must have made all the necessary preparations. He was determined to win. "Tamiya, we will never lose. I believe in him." Maybe even the Father in heaven was blessing me, and the lawsuit went smoothly. When the judge ruled for the divorce in court, I was stunned for a long time. 3 years of marriage finally came to an end. From now on, my life will set sail again. Anderson hugged me gentlemanly and said, "Tamiya, you are free." I laughed. It was the first genuine smile I showed during these dark days. After leaving the court, I went to the cemetery and burned paper for my father. There was a familiar figure following behind me. From the moment he received the divorce decree, there was no light in Gerald's eyes. He looked like a puppy abandoned by its owner, with an extremely humble attitude. "I don't want to bother with him." He squatted down and touched the handsome black and white photo of the old man. I told him casually about my recent situation. "Dad, I got my divorce successfully. I will also have custody of the child. Do you think I've made a fortune?" Gerald's family didn't win the custody battle, but they still have to pay 100 million yuan in support every year. By the way, I'm going to start filming a movie next month. As for me, my career and life are going well, so you can rest assured. As I was talking, my vision started to blur. Then I realized that I was crying again. There is a saying that goes, "The death of a loved one is a dampness in one's life." The accumulated snow in the first month of the year slowly melted, and the long-awaited sunshine fell on our bodies, making us feel warm. I stood up, turned around, and walked out. From the corner of my eye, I saw Gerald kneeling on the ground a few meters away, kowtowed heavily towards my father's tombstone. He made up for the regret of not being able to attend the funeral on the day of the funeral. As his skin scraped against the hard stone road, blood oozed from the man's forehead. When we passed by each other, he suddenly grabbed my wrist and said in a trembling voice, "Don't get divorced, the child needs a father. It seems like you are talking meaningless nonsense. The verdict has come out, and we all know that everything is settled and there is no going back." I slowly pulled my hand out from his palm. "No need, I can leave the father and keep the son." Gerald just stood there staring at me. "I have no regrets. Go straight out." 3 months later, my new movie after my postpartum comeback is finished. During the roadshow promotion, there was a question-asking session for fans. They were the ones who accompanied me through several years and finally made it through. They knew exactly what happened to me during this period. In the crowd, a young girl held up a microphone and asked me, "Sister Tamiya, it has been so hard to come this far. In addition to the discerning director, is there anyone else you would like to thank?" I thought about the wording. 2 indeed. The first one is my father. The second is my divorce lawyer. Without my dad, there would be no Tamia who could focus on achieving her ideals.
No, Anderson.
There would be no Tamia who has broken through the cage and gained a new life. The young girl nodded slightly. We are also very happy. The fan club prepared gifts overnight. Sister Tamia, I wish you a happy divorce. The words had just fallen. The big screen behind me suddenly started playing a video. This is a collection of all the roles I have played in the few years since my debut. It brought tears to my eyes. But unexpectedly, fans left the last scene to my dad. In the video, he was sitting in the audience, waving a cheering stick and shouting with great pride, "Hey, see, that's my daughter on the stage, the movie queen." In just a few months, everything has changed. I turned my back and wiped my tears, but I accidentally glanced at the last row. In a corner where no one was paying attention, Anderson held up the small sign and looked at me quietly. There is an empty seat next to him. I know, it's for my dad. The old man came to see me too. I bowed deeply to the audience. Say it in your heart. Thank you, my protectors. Wish I could escape from this misery. Towards Spring Mountain.